All right. Okay. Welcome to PCL Live. I know it's going to take about a minute or two for those of you to log on, but so I'm going to give you guys a minute. And remember our rules. When you get on the show, please state what city or country you're watching from. We just want to say hello to you. All right. So we're going to give you guys a minute or so to log on. Let's see. All right. And remember, place in the comments what city or state or country you are watching from. We have a special guest today. And I want you guys to be, as you've always been, very involved with our questions and our comments as we talk about situational leadership today. So, hi, Joanne from UK. Nice to have you here. I don't think I've seen you before, so if this is your first time, welcome. Joanne from the Sterling, UK. Hi, Arena from Houston. Nicole from DMV, Pensacola. Boardsville, Texas. McAllen, Texas. Tampa. We have Birmingham, Alabama. All right, there you go. Let's see who else we have here. All right, so I'm going to give you guys Plano, Texas, Trinidad, and as at Toronto. Okay, Mozambique. Nice to have you here. Las Vegas, Nevada. Nice to have you here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Some of you I know are repeat viewers, so thank you so much for supporting our show. Panama, I think that's maybe the first I'm seeing Panama on the show. Ghana, welcome. I know I have a lot of folks who watch from Ghana. Thank you for watching. I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds, and then I'm going to bring my guest on camera. We have a special guest with us today. We're going to talk about situational leadership and just leadership lessons. Hey, Cayman Islands. I know Texas, there are many from Texas. I saw that. There's a lot of Texans on our feed. Yes, Irene, a lot of Texans, but we love Texans. So that's all. It's all good. It's all good. Jamaica, my hometown, land of my birth. Don't think I've seen a Jamaican on here before. So it's very big, special welcome to you guys. And of course, so you guys are celebrating that Olympic win, first, second, and third place with that 100-meter race there. So, all right. So, all right, I'll let you guys get on here. I'll try to give you guys some more shout outs in a second. Florida. My guest is from Florida, so I'm sure he's going to feel supported having you Floridians. Floridians, as you guys know, who've been following me for a while, I lived here for 27 years, just relocated to somewhere else. Australia, Nairobi. Okay. All right. So I'm going to bring my guest on camera. All right. And today we have a special guest, retired Lieutenant Colonel Oak McCulloch. And I'm going to read a little bit from his bio. Hey, Oak, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Sharon.
All right. All right. We can't wait to hear from you and from some of your lessons. So let me read a little bit about Oak's background. In his 23-year career in the Army, Oak McCulloch held numerous leadership positions in the infantry and armor branches. He assisted in disaster relief operations for Hurricane Hugo in Charleston, South Carolina, and Hurricane Andrew in South Florida. His operational deployments include Operation Desert Shield / Desert Storm in Saudi Arabia and Iraq as a general's aide-de-camp, the congressional liaison officer in support of operations in Bosnia, and the operations officer during a peacekeeping deployment in Kosovo. He held instructor positions at the U.S. Army Ordnance School, the U.S. Army Command, and General Staff College. The Australian, I think I had an Aussie here on the line, the Australian Command and Staff College, University of South Alabama, and Stetson University. His last position in the Army was a 3-year tour as the professor of military science at the University of South Alabama, where he led the training and commissioning of lieutenants and tripled the size of the program in his 3-year tour. Lieutenant McCulloch retired from the Army in September 2009 with over 23 years of active service and joined the staff at the Bay Area Food Bank as the Associate Director. So here we have someone who's been in several leadership roles. That's why I thought it was very important and very relevant, I guess, that we talk about situational leadership. But before we get started, Oak is also an author of a book entitled Leadership Legacy, Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. And we're going to be putting that link in the comment so you can see that you can buy his book on Amazon. So I'm going to ask Oak to give us a little bit about the book, why he wrote the book, and to give us 3 key principles from that book. So Oak, welcome, and I turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Sharon. Yeah, people ask me all the time why I wrote the book and who I wrote it for. And I always tell people the reason I wrote it was because as I go around and talk to people, especially young men and women, I always ask them, what do you want to do? And I get this, I want to be a leader. And I say, okay, what does that look like? What does it take? And I get that deer in the headlights look, they know they want to be a leader, but they have no idea what it takes to be one. So I wrote the book for that reason as I was going around. And I really wrote it for 2 groups of people, young men and women who are aspiring to be leaders, either in high school or college, or junior leaders in companies like my son now. And then I also wrote it for old people like me who have been a leader for a while. And I always tell people, whether you've been you're a young person aspiring to be a leader, or you're somebody like me who's been a leader for 20, 30, 40 years, you can learn something every day. I mean, leadership is a journey. It's not a destination. So you can continue to learn along the way. And I think at least the feedback I've been getting from both my presentations and from the book, I think I've hit the mark on those things. So I wrote 9 chapters, but really to me, the 3 big ones are servant leadership. That's what it's all about, is being a servant. It's not about you. I think communications is huge. As a leader, you've got to be able to communicate, and then you got to be able to build a team. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Building a team, motivating people. If you can't do that as a leader, you're not going to be successful.
Well, you touched on 3 big points. You mentioned communication, servant leadership, and building a team. And really, they really go hand in hand, right? Because I feel like if you're going to build a great team, and this is where I think leaders miss it, right? I think it's important to have, in my opinion, that servant leader mindset. I think it's the most effective mindset and the most effective leadership style for effective teams. And I'll tell you why. I believe that if the leader really models that servant heart and attitude, they're going to have team members who want to work for them, who want to follow them. And of course, communication is key. So let's talk a little bit about your leadership experience in the Army. I want to know what was that like, and what were some of the key character attributes, right, that you felt that you needed for that particular type of leadership? Because we're talking about situational leadership. You've led in the Army, you've led in the food bank. Those are 2 different arenas, right? But leadership is leadership, but we know we have to tweak it sometimes. So tell me how servant leadership worked in the Army.
So I think leadership is leadership, and it just depends on what situation you're in, depending on how you apply those principles that are the same no matter what. So I think, a couple things in the Army that people in the civilian world may not have is, first of all, you're going to get some respect in the Army just because of your rank. That's a part. But to really get people to do the things you want, you got to gain that respect. And I think the way you gain that respect, and the way that you lead, at least I led in the Army, was, number one, is that I made sure that my soldiers, my people, my team knew that I had their best interest at heart. That doesn't always mean you let them do whatever they want. I mean, sometimes you got to make them do things they don't want to do, and that's still in their best interest, whether they understand that at that point or not. The other thing that you got to do is you got to make sure that that you're taking care of those people, and that that whether that's letting them go early today because you had them there till 9 o'clock last night, or maybe if you had them there till 9 o'clock last night, you're not making them come in till 9, 10 o'clock this morning. Whatever that takes to make them understand that again, you're taking care of them and you got their best interest at heart. And the last piece of that I think that the servant leadership part is that you never ask anybody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself or that you're not doing yourself. I prided myself on always being with my soldiers, wherever they were, whatever they were doing, that's where I was, that's what I was doing. And I think if you do that, then they understand that this isn't about you. It's about the team. It's about accomplishing a mission, a task, a job, whatever it is. And as long as they see you there doing the exact same thing they're doing, then they're willing to do whatever you ask them to do.
I find it so interesting, actually, Oak, because when you think Army, I'm wanting to hear from some of the folks here on the feed. When I hear Army and I hear leadership, immediately what goes to my mind or comes to my mind is authoritarian leadership. Command. You think Army, you think command. And what you're saying is so interesting. When you describe your leadership method, right? Which was you follow the servant leadership method. It sounded like there was so much heart there, right? That you said that, and I believe respect has to be earned, right? Yes, there are positional leaders, but we all know that true leadership is earned respect leadership, right?
Absolutely.
And when you mentioned that if your men worked late or were asked to work late the night before, and you would take into account for how they would show up the next day. And I just want to remind people, right? Remind the leaders who are watching that it comes down to showing your team that you care. Because that's exactly what you described right here, Oak. That you showed, even in the Army, even in such a structured place, right? You were demonstrating that heart. I just find it to be very fascinating.
Well, and this is what I always tell people. 30 years ago, I think probably more so that the Army was one of those, I'm telling you, and this is what you're going to do, and I don't have to tell you why. I'm just telling you you're going to do it. That doesn't work in today's environment, in today's society with our young men and women, and nor should it work. But one of the things that I always tell people is, look, when I have a chance to, and this goes into that situational leadership. When I have a chance, I call everybody in. Let's say I get a task or a mission. I call all my junior leaders in and I say, okay, guys and gals, this is what we got to do. Give me some ideas. And I'll listen to everybody's ideas. I may not use everybody's ideas. I may not use anybody's ideas, but I want to hear their points of view. And so what I generally have found in my life in the Army and even in the civilian world is that when I get those, then what I generally do is I'll use a little bit from this person, a little bit from that person, a little bit from this person, and I'll throw in my own views, and now I'll come up with an idea that'll work. And I do that whenever possible. Now, there's times in my life when that isn't possible. When people were shooting at me, wasn't going to call everybody in and ask questions. I was going to say, that bad man shooting at me, make him stop. Most people don't have to deal with that.
Right.
However, having said that, in the civilian world, there still are times when you don't have time to call everybody together and ask everybody's opinion. You have to make decisions on a very fast-paced, very quick decision timeline, and those situations are there. But for the most part, most of the time, we can include people, and if you do that, then you're going to gain their respect as well.
Absolutely. So someone's asking, do you think that leaders who do not reach self-actualization level, just from the Maslow's hierarchy, may find it hard to be a servant leader and therefore not a leader at all?
Well, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think everybody is set out to be a leader. I mean, people can be a leader; they can have the title, but having a title doesn't make you a leader. You're in a leadership position, but that doesn't mean that people are going to follow you. And certainly not willingly if they do, like in the military, obviously somebody has to follow you if they're in the military, or if you can punish them. But that's not, you're not the leader if you have to go to that. I tell people all the time, look, I can probably count on one hand in my 23 years on active duty as an officer, I could probably count on one hand the number of times I had to tell somebody, this is what you're going to do because I'm telling you this is what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, that I failed when I had to do that. Now, there are a few times I had to do that, but that's not the right answer. And if you are really, really doing your job correctly, you should not have to use that method. It should be, this is what we got to do. Let's go. Let's get it done. And that's generally been my experience, both in the military and in civilian world.
I want to add to that, Harshita. I want to add to that question about the self-actualization and finding it hard to be a servant leader. I think being a servant leader is independent of self-actualization, Harshita. I think you have to decide if that's the kind of person that you are. Do you have that servant leader mentality? I don't think you have to wait until you're at the top of your game. I think even as a brand new leader, you can decide from the very beginning, before you are self-actualized, you can decide that I want to be the leader who serves my people, right? I want to be the leader who, is leading from a place of love, serving, empathy. You don't have to wait until you feel like you've accomplished all those ladders up. You can decide right there. So we're talking about situational leadership today, and I thought that Oak would be a great candidate to speak about that, because not only did he lead in the Army, Oak, you also led at the food bank, right? So I want to know, how did you adapt your leadership, or did you have to adapt your leadership? Is there any stories? Was there any aha moments when you transferred from leading in the Army environment to leading in a food bank where you're working with volunteers and maybe lower waged earners?
Yeah, well, I think that there's always, again, situational. I think the principles are all the same, and you're going to lead those things that make you successful are going to be successful. You may have to tweak them here and there and change little things, but for the most part, it's the same. It goes to motivating people, and you can motivate people whether they're, in the military or in the civilians, volunteers or paid. You still got to motivate people. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Army, it was very easy to motivate people. I'd walk in and say, hey, look, guys, we got this mission. We defend the Constitution of the United States. We defend the American way of life. Let's go do this thing. And I never had any problems motivating people. That didn't work in the food bank. Go figure, And so one day I was in a meeting with some, we were trying to plan out the big food event handout that we did every year. And we were going through a meeting, trying to plan it all out about 3 weeks ahead of time. And at about 4 o'clock, everybody started to kind of close their books, and do everything to get ready to leave. And I said, where are you going? We're not done. And they said, well, sir, it's time to leave. And I said, but we're not done. And they said, well, it's time to go home. It's 4 o'clock. And I said, okay, anybody who wants to leave, go ahead and leave. I said, but just remember that if we don't do this right, and some 19-year-old young lady goes home and can't feed her 3-month-old, 4-month-old, 5-month-old baby, it's your fault. Guess how many people left that meeting? 0. I've kind of figured it out. You got to give people a sense of purpose. And the way I always tell people, the way to figure out what that sense of purpose is to figure out what makes your organization unique. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, then you're going to be able to find that sense of purpose, which will motivate people.
I think that's such a great point. As I was listening to Oak's story, right? So in the military, the purpose was we're defending the Constitution of the United States. That was the purpose. So even if they're tired, even if they're feeling discouraged, that was the mission. That was the purpose. And so you take that into the civilian world, into your workplace, into your company, and you're telling your employees to move, push. But they aren't even clear as to what your mission and your vision is, right? And this is why we call this page Purpose-Centered Leadership, because I have a tremendous amount of years background working in a nonprofit and also working in corporate, and I find that purpose, having your employees rally around something that is bigger than just that paycheck, that money, is so important. So for those of you who are leading out there, notice that when Oak wanted the folks to work after 4 o'clock, which was their cutoff point. They were not interested until they heard the bigger purpose, right? That what they do matter. And employees nowadays, they want to know that what they do literally fits into the mission and the bigger purpose of the organization. So that was a great, great share. So,
yeah, well, I think that, again, that's part of being a leader is you got to have a vision and you got to be able to communicate that. It goes back to the communication piece. If you can't communicate what your vision is, where you are now and where you want to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, a month from now, then you're not going to be a good leader. Because if you think you're the one that's going to take that organization from where you are now to where you want to be 5 years from now, you're sadly mistaken. It's the people who work for you and with you who are going to take you there. And if they don't know where you want to go and why, then they're not going to get there.
Absolutely. And we're talking today about situational leadership, and we're talking with retired Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch. And he has a book called Leadership Legacy. The link is going to be in the comments. I think it's already in the feed further up. We'll put it in the feed again. The link for his book and for his website. And we're also inviting you who've been watching with us week after week. We're kicking off our leadership community tomorrow called Communally. And this is only for leaders who are wanting to level up their leadership, wanting to learn principles of servant leadership, purpose-centered leadership, situational leadership, and how to navigate leading in today's environment. Now, Oak, we have seen leadership really challenged this last year, as not only were there companies that were closing down, they were having to use a pivot, as for want of a better word. That word's been kind of overused, but we're now having leaders challenged with leading a hybrid or a completely remote environment. What is your advice for those leaders? How do they then keep that mission and purpose front and center? And how you mentioned earlier that people need to be motivated. How do you motivate someone who's working from home?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think number one, you have to make sure that people still understand that they're the important piece of your organization. I don't care where you're working or how you're working. They need to understand that the organization is only as good as the people who work there. So the safety is an issue, and safety is at the foremost of your mind. Number two is I think you got to have in this, and luckily we've got this beautiful technology where we can sit and look at each other and talk to each other. But I think that's the key.
Yes.
If you're going to have virtual meetings, then people need to have their camera on so people can see that they're sitting there, paying attention, and being a part of the organization. So many times today, I'm in a virtual meeting with my job that I have, my day job that pays the bills, and people have their camera off. You don't even know if they're in the room. Nobody's asking them questions so that they can just have their hooked on there and have their thing muted. They don't even know. So you got to have them involved. You got to get them involved, and the only way to do that is if we make sure that the camera is on and we ask direct questions that make people be involved, not just put information out, but get people involved. And as long as you do that, then I think you're going to be okay. But the key is to make sure that people still understand that it's all about them. It's about the people of that organization, because without them, you don't have an organization.
I want to keep on this topic for a little bit, because I'm in a lot of Zoom meetings, right, with clients and just all day long. I want to ask you your opinion, right, as a leader, because I have seen those meetings where the cameras are off. It's a pet peeve of mine. I really want to see you when I'm talking to you.
Absolutely.
I really do. So how do you as a leader navigate this? Everyone has their rights thing, right? How do you navigate telling that employee or employees, like, look, we need your camera on, without sounding like a dictator? I mean, how do you think they navigate it? Because I've seen it, and it's baffling to me how you would show up at a team meeting without having your camera on when it's, it's supposed to be on. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. So the way I, and even, I'm not in charge of the team meetings or the Zoom meetings or whatever that I'm doing nowadays in my job. I'm just a worker bee, just like everybody else. And I always, even then, when somebody's talking, I always tell them, yeah, put your camera on so we can see you and we can feel like you're a part of the team. And you got to go back to that. You got to talk about it being part of the team, not that you're calling out an individual, but that we all are part of a team. And the only way we feel like we're part of a team is if we're together. And if I don't see your picture, then I don't know that we're together. And I don't know that. So I think as long as you bring it back to that it's being part of a team, then I think you can get away with, hey, everybody turn your camera on so we can be that organization. You can be a part of this team and we all feel that. And I think as long as you do that, I think you're okay. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm hoping that that's really helping some of the leaders and managers on this line, because I know I did a poll recently on our page and I believe it was, I asked, what was your position? Was it a manager, team lead, CEO, founder? And I found that there were, I think it was over 50 or 60% of the people who were on this page were in management position. And I advocate every week that managers are leaders. We need to change that mindset from manager manage things and leaders lead people to managers are now leading people and have a big say. So I hope for you managers, as you're trying to, step into the leadership waters, especially in this time, that's a really good a tactic, I think, to say, hey, we're on Zoom together. We're having a team meeting or a staff meeting or a whatever meeting. Turn your camera on because we want to feel like you're a team. Now, there's a question.
Yeah, otherwise, just do a conference call.
Exactly. I mean, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
Just do a call. And it's true. Because I do believe, just Zoom protocol, I do believe if you're going to be on Zoom with your camera off, for me, guys, it's a pet peeve. I just feel like it's rude.
It's for me too, Sharon. I mean, that just drives me nuts. I don't understand it.
It drives me crazy. It's a pet peeve. There's a question for you. Does your purpose include to develop your successor? At military, do you have that freedom to mentor your successor or to have influence on deciding who it will be?
No, very little in the military. Having said that, you can be a mentor to a lot of people, and being a mentor is part of my book, and it's a huge part of my book. And I talk about people who I was lucky enough to have some great people who were mentors for me that certainly helped me out. But I think you're not mentoring the person who is taking your spot. You're mentoring younger people who are going to grow up and eventually be in your spot. Now, the way we do that in the military, where you can at least help the person who's going to take your spot, although you have no say in who that's going to be, is we have these things, we call them, continuity books. So, you lay out all the things that you do and when you do them and why you do them and how you do them. And then that way, when the new guy walks in or gal, they walk in and they got to do a commissioning ceremony. Then they pull out the book on commissioning ceremony and it lays out who they got to call, what they got to do, what it all entails. And so I think that's good. But I think mentoring, if you aren't mentoring somebody and you're a leader, you are not a good leader. I'm just here to tell you. You've got to mentor people. It is so important that you pick out. Now, you can't mentor everybody. You don't have time. But it is so important to pick out those people that you think are going to be those diamonds in the rough, those gems down the road, and mentor them, because that's how they become better leaders, is through your mentorship. And you got to do it. You have to do it. You got to make an effort to do it. That's, one of the whole things in my book is, a great quote that one of my soldiers said to me. I didn't say it to them. They said it to me. They said, passing down leadership from generation to generation is what develops great nations. And you can take that word nations and replace company, organization, university, hospital, whatever you want. The principle is the same. It's handing down that great leadership is what makes those great organizations. And I believe that.
I am definitely in agreement with that. And, and Oak said it really strongly. If you're not mentoring someone, you're not a great leader. And I totally believe that. And it takes a selfless leader one that's not competing. I always say don't compete, complete, right? It takes a selfless leader, a mature leader, a servant leader to mentor from a true place of service and heart, right?
That's
Because
right.
you're not in competition with your bright and rising stars, my friends, right? You're there as a leader. I always tell leaders, when you mentor and you replace your success, you replace yourself with your successor, it's only pushing you up, right? It's not taking your place. It's pushing you up. It's pushing you up in a mental way, and it's pushing you up in a positional way as well. So,
Well, and it's also it's making your team better.
absolutely,
I mean, and
absolutely.
again, if that isn't what you're there to be a leader about, then I got to question why you're a leader if it's not about your team.
And this is why I think it's such a trap, Oak, when we have managers versus leaders, because I think it's almost like it's like a setup for managers to fail, right? Because managers are the ones who are really leading your little team, but they're also where a lot of problems happen with the competition, thwarting your rising stars because you are afraid of losing that position as a manager, and it's very sad. I have this book behind me from Gallup that talks about it's the manager that people leave organizations. They leave managers, not the company itself, and it's really too sad. And this is why I'm really an advocate for leadership development and training. We cannot have too many leaders. I'm gonna put one more question on here, and I'm gonna also ask Oak in his last minute on the show to tell us what would be the biggest takeaway from his book.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's selfless service, and I start it and I end it with that. And the second chapter of the book is it's not about you, it's all about you, because it's not about you and that what privileges you get, what benefits you get, more pay, better house, all those kinds of things. That's not why we made you a leader. We made you a leader so that you could better serve those who work for you and those you work for. And if you don't get that, if you don't understand that, then I tell people, then you're never going to be a good leader. Because if service is below you, then leadership is beyond you. I mean, you've got to be able to serve people, in my opinion. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that all the things that I put in my book doesn't mean anything if you don't understand that piece of it.
Awesome. And remember, now we've already placed Oak's link in the comments, so you can get his book. It's called Leadership Legacy: Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. And we're just so thankful to have you here, Oak. We thank you for your service to our country, those of us here in the United States, and we thank you for using that experience to create a product, to create a book that will further help young people, and even those of us who have some gray hairs, to be better leaders.
A few of them.
Believe my color mine.
I always tell people I color mine gray to look distinguished. They're not buying it.
No, they're not buying it. They'll buy mine though. And we're also inviting you guys. You've been watching this show, that we are starting off tomorrow a smaller community of leaders. And it is my vision and mission in that particular group to truly help shape, I don't want to sound like it's all lofty, but to truly shape our communities with just better leadership principles, especially as we navigate this hybrid world, this virtual world, and we don't know where it's all going to go. But we want to make sure that the sound leadership principles of servant leadership, purpose-centered leadership, translate into this new culture, and that's what we're going to be teaching and sharing in community with other leaders who are of like mind. So we just want to thank you again, Oak. We thank you for just again your great feedback, and we thank you guys for watching. And if you're watching and it's not 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Monday, you are team replay. So remember, do hashtag team replay, and I promise you I will answer your questions in the feed. So until next week, God bless and take care.
Thanks, Sharon.
You're very welcome.